Hey everyone, this is Mitch with Ramp Careers. I'm here with Manoj and excited to chat with you all today. We're going to be talking about the top skills that an SDR needs in 2020. We're living in a virtual world now, and I think this is the new normal for a while. Seeing a lot of companies that aren't going back to work for the foreseeable future. So Manoj, let's rattle off a couple top skills the SDRs are going to need. New virtual normal that we're all living in. Why don't you kick it off?
Yeah, man, listen, difficult selling times. I'm going to resist my urge to use the word pandemic challenging times. I feel like I've been using that way too often, and it's gotten to a point where others use it. But with that said, it really is an incredibly challenging time to sell. And I'm sure that that's something that we've personally noticed ourselves. Lots of prospects that are not ready to buy, do not have budgets, are waiting to see how things will pan out in the next 4 to 6 months. And so I think we're living in a world where any way you can get an edge and any way you can stand out to make a case for your product or service, that's going to differentiate winners from losers. And one thing that comes, to the top of my mind is just video prospecting. I've seen that seems to be new normal these days, especially because everyone's at home. Too many touch points that are text-based, a bunch of SDRs hitting people up from all different angles. And I think as a buyer, you're trying to hold on to something that is a little bit outside the norm, but can also replace some of the physical outreach and physical touch points that you may have been used to in the past. And so I think video prospecting is probably something that's really important as an SDR.
Yeah, I like video prospecting. I think it's a good way to personalize it, but how do you rationalize the time it takes to create a customized video for each and every prospect, right? Like most SDRs have daily email goals they're trying to hit, and it takes a while, especially if you have to do a couple takes. If you mess up, you can be spending 10 minutes creating this video in hopes that someone opens it and watches it.
Yeah, it's another interesting point that you bring up. I was having another conversation with somebody just about this. I mean, a couple of things. One is, I don't know if the spray and pray approach works anymore, whether there's COVID or a pandemic or whether there isn't. I think those days are really behind us. The whole dear first name, parentheses industry, it's not going to work. Like those emails are simply not working. And so if we're going to be asking the sales development folks of today and tomorrow to hyper personalize, might as well, give videos a go. Another thing that I realized, and I mean, I'm not trying to be stereotypical or ageist here, but there's definitely a generational switch here. I feel like folks that are ready to be entry-level SDRs or entry-level SDRs today have just grown up in an ecosystem where they're already used to producing short-form content. Maybe they haven't done it in a professional capacity, but they've grown up using Snapchat. They've grown up making creative videos on TikTok. But if you move past the spectrum and you run into the late 20s, the early 30s and after, that's a little bit of a new exercise for us where we have to think about, how do I look? How do I think about lighting? It's not something that we've just grown up with. And so I don't know if it takes that long for someone that is used to doing this anyways from a social perspective, and that's how they're interacting with friends and family, to just port that over to a professional capacity. What I will cite to as proof is that I remember, back when I was using tools such as a CRM or an Excel, that I kind of look at my dad and kind of crack up. I'm like, oh, you're so slow at this. You're not very good. This is because he was struggling with it. Yeah. And I think that is what's happening today. So maybe, video prospecting is going to be relatively easy for folks, right? And hopefully people make that switch from saying, I'm not going to just use this from social interaction perspective. I think there's some portability here that I can bring it into the workplace, add a bit of polish to it where you have to. But that's kind of my immediate take. Have you seen, or do you think otherwise?
No, I agree. I think you're right. I wasn't really thinking about it. Folks that are coming of age into the working world now, you're right. They grew up with it a lot differently than we did. They'll probably be faster at it in general. I think another quick and easy fix is just tier your prospects. So your tier A folk, top 50 companies that you will do anything for a meeting for. Maybe those are the folks that you like hyper personalize a video for, or you spend the extra time crafting a personalized email. And then maybe the bottom 100 folks or bottom 150 that aren't as highly that you aren't targeting as highly, you can automate that a little bit more. So
yeah. I wonder if there's if we're ready for kind of deep fakes of video today. Maybe you just type out text and something else that's AI that is not even like really you can make a video based on the text that you type.
Yeah, so it's funny you mentioned that. I've seen video tools out there. I don't remember any of the names off the top of my head, but where it'll be as simple as like you hold up a whiteboard and then it will fill in like the prospect's first name, last name for you or something like that. So it will throw in text. Deepfakes for sure. I saw that you liked, I'm trying to find it right now. You liked LinkedIn post today by a company called Ample Market. Ample Market. They use what they call liquid syntax to AI generate outbound emails. I set up a meeting with the founder just to talk to him and see what the product looks like on Friday. So that's like another, we're seeing AI, machine learning, whatever you want to call it, come into sales where now it's going to take everything it knows about a prospect, craft the email for you. So
yeah, I wonder what's going to be the next outreach for video prospecting, right? Where you set up a cadence and it's the same first name, last name, and then instead of just text, it's going to be audio. I mean, at the end of the day, buyer, I don't really care, right? I mean, I go to the movies and I sit and clap at CGI. I mean, I know it's not real, but it still entertains me. It still communicates a message. So I don't know if I'd be deeply offended that it's not an actual person.
You're not offended until you get the one email that's like, it messes up and it's like, dear first name, and you're like, it's a robot, it's not even real, like they mess up the email, and we're all guilty of it. But then you like kind of see behind the curtain. It's not as much fun. Like when you go to Hollywood and you see what the movie set looks like, it kind of ruins watching a movie for you. So if they can trick you, then it's great. But yeah, when you see behind, it's not as fun. Okay,
that's
so
we get there. Yeah, video prospecting is a core skill. Another thing that comes to the top of my mind is this resilience, man. I know it sounds corny, but stuff is really hard right now. It is more likely that you'll hear no's than yeses. And not giving up is going to be hypercritical. It's so easy to just give up and say, all right, I'm just going to take it as it is, deal with it in 2 quarters when things get better. Right now, it's beyond my control. To some extent, yeah, it is beyond your control, but there are things that you can control, right? Quality of outreach, volume of outreach, and just sheer persistence. And people that are able to do it individually, but also sales teams and sales leaders that foster that line of thinking where you don't get penalized for things that you can control, but you're rewarded for activities and volume and quality metrics that you are able to. I think that might separate good sales teams and good SDRs from the rest of the pack.
Yeah, definitely. And that starts, I think you nailed it, that starts at the top. Right? Because it's up to leadership to help incentivize all of the AEs, SDRs, really the whole org underneath them so that they're aligning correctly in the direction they want to head. I think it's great if you have internal resiliency and you're the type of person that can just put your head down, grind every day. I think all of us, can probably get better at it to some extent, but it's hard unless you have something driving you. Normally that's, compensation, right? Like, if you make this many calls, you're going to get paid. In a time like this, when you don't have, maybe you're not seeing the number of SQLs come in that you normally would, I think you need to find another motivator, whether it's simply just upskilling your own salesmanship, learning. I like to think about every call of mine as just a way to get better. I kind of lump that into the curiosity bucket where it's like, what can I learn here that's going to make myself better? What can I learn about the world? What can I learn about this business that I might be able to use down the road? And if you kind of turn each call into a game where I'm trying to learn something, I can get something out of this besides just money. I think it at least makes it a little more entertaining and it kind of gives you something to keep striving for.
That's interesting. I think that's probably the third most important. We'll kind of wrap it up with, but that is this curiosity. How do you not just build curiosity with your prospects, but how do you enter into a discussion with anybody with an open mind, curious about what their position is today, what their business is about, what are the challenges that they're facing, and truly digging in to see whether you can solve some of their challenges today or a month from now, 2 months from now. That's a very difficult ask. And I think I am myself guilty of sometimes not keeping that front and center because it's so easy when you're trying to sell, where you focus on your product or your service and you're curious insofar as you think that you're able to sell your stuff quickly, right? The second you get a pulse that it's not happening, like all of that curiosity drops. But I think that it's a very short-term oriented thinking, but it's hard. It's very difficult. I don't want to just throw out and say, hey, be naturally curious, go for it. I think for some people it might come naturally, but for the rest, I truly believe it can be learned.
For sure. And I think you're right. You have to have that long-term view. So you have to almost think of it as I'm curious to develop myself past even this role, right? What can I learn? I think you can learn something from everyone. And as an SDR, what's cool is you get to get an inside look at somebody's business, an inside look that most normal folks never get to see. You get to understand how this company is operating at a deep level, and so much so that you're trying to sell your product or service, but you really get to look behind the curtain in a lot of cases. And that's really cool. And if you can kind of develop the liking for understanding the, inner workings of a company, then you can take every call, and whether you can sell or can't, you can still take something from that call, I think.
Yeah. Hey, and one last general thought, and I'd love to kind of pick your brain because I think you're closer to this than I am, is a lot of interactions, right, when you can't quite measure just objectively, you have some other subjective measures, right? For example, if you're an SDR, success that's tied to your performance is clear when you have a meeting booked, and it's even more clear if the deal actually closes. If you're a customer support professional, success is tied to whether or not you were able to resolve someone's inquiry, right? So you solve their problem, great. You don't, not good. I wonder if you can export some of what I've seen in customer support service interactions into sales. Do you think that there's a way for sales teams to gauge general performance through some kind of CSAT score at the end of every conversation? Like, do you think it's too intrusive to prospects to just send them a quick rate on a scale of 0 to 10, whether this call was helpful, you learned about a product or service or not? I wonder if that's at least a learning tool for prospects, because for the ones that say we're not interested, how do you know?
Yeah.
How do you know the reason behind it? You might just think that there's or run it against your band. Maybe you were not good with explaining what your product or service is.
Yeah. I mean, there's plenty of times, myself included, where you just missed the mark, right? You just didn't find the pain that you could solve, or you just didn't connect with the prospect, quick enough for them to understand it. I'm trying to think of what that would look like to where the prospect would take action. In all the engagements I have where SDRs call me, would I ever, it has to be so easy for me to respond back and give them a thumbs up or something?
Well,
Maybe, though.
It's a 0 to 10 scale, right? I mean, it's not a long survey or a form.
Right. Just
maybe the question could just be, was this a good use of your time? I mean, that could be as simple as that. That alone is indicative. If someone says it was a waste of my time, then maybe you'll have to reconsider what is it that caused your prospect to feel that way, because you've gotten their attention enough to talk to you, but
right.
Post-call, they felt like it was a waste of their time. So I wonder if it's a good model. I'm just kind of naturally curious, because nothing happens when you decide that you're not moving further. That just goes back into a marketing funnel, and you'll say, yeah, I'm going to nurture them. But how are you learning from that call? Are you getting any feedback from the prospect in a less intrusive way? I'm just bringing it back to the curiosity question.
Yeah, well, you're right. We never really do a postmortem on intro calls that don't go anywhere. On close loss deals, you figure out was it price? Did they go with a competitor? Way down the funnel. But if you're trying to increase just top of funnel generation, yeah, it'd be worthwhile understanding what did we miss here? Why did we miss the mark? Maybe you can figure that out while you're on the call, right? At the end of the call, you need to be brave enough or curious enough to ask, okay, sounds like there's not a fit here. You're not interested in moving forward and speaking with an AE, doing a demo, blah, blah.
Yeah.
Why? Is it because, you don't see the value because we're too expensive? Is it because you don't have anything we can solve? Is it because you're just simply tied up with another project and, maybe it's just timing?
Yeah.
So you bake that into your process. I could see a world where you send an automated email at the end of the call and try to get some sort of feedback.
Yeah. I mean, I'm just curious as you're trying to get better. And, if we say that, hey, listen, video prospecting is critical, being curious is critical, these are all top skills. How are we getting real-time good feedback from things that don't really manifest? Because that's really where the bulk of your activities lie. 90% of what you do doesn't really turn into something tied to meaningful revenue for your business today, but are those all missed opportunities, or are you learning, from them? I know that Gong kind of records phone calls, and you do a bit of intelligence on it. So maybe there's something there. Yeah, that's kind of what I have on the top of my mind, but we can wrap this discussion up, pick it back up tomorrow with a new topic.
Cool. Sounds good. Later, Manoj.
Later.